The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty plaza of Meridian Prime, but Zara Voss felt none of its warmth. She knelt in the center of the crowded square, her once pristine research robes torn and stained with mud and rotting fruit. Colonists formed a tight circle around her, their faces twisted with hatred and disgust. Just 3 months ago, these same people had celebrated her groundbreaking work in alien soil regeneration. Now they saw her as nothing more than a fraud and a traitor. "Liar," shouted a woman from the crowd, hurling a handful of decomposed vegetables. That splattered against Zara's shoulder. The purple stains spread across her torn clothing like bruises. "You poisoned our crops with your fake research." Zara kept her head down, her long auburn hair falling like a curtain to hide the tears she refused to shed. The accusations weren't true, but on the frontier colonies, truth mattered less than scapegoats. When the harvests failed and people grew hungry, they needed someone to blame. Her former colleagues at the Research Institute had been all too willing. To sacrifice her reputation to save their own, the crowd pressed closer, their anger feeding on itself like a living thing. Hands reached out to push her, to tear at what remained of her dignity. Zara closed her eyes and tried to remember who she had been before this nightmare began. Dr. Zara Voss, leading expert in xenobiology, author of 12 published papers, respected scientist. That woman felt like a stranger now, a deep voice cut through the jeering like a blade through silk. That's enough. The crowd turned toward the source of the command. Captain Jace Sterling stood at the edge of the square, his tall frame casting an imposing shadow. His weathered leather jacket hung open over a simple gray shirt, and his dark eyes surveyed the scene with calm authority. At 35, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced down worse threats than an angry mob. "This isn't your concern, Spacer," growled the colony administrator, a portly man whose face had turned red with exertion. "This woman committed crimes against our people." Jace took a step forward, his hand resting casually on the grip of his sidearm. "I don't see any official proceedings here. It's just a bunch of cowards picking on someone who can't fight back." The administrator's face grew even redder. "She falsified research data. Our children went hungry because of her lies." "Maybe," Jace said, his voice never rising above a conversational tone. "But I know mob justice when I see it, and this isn't justice." He moved closer to Zara, extending his hand toward her. "Come on, let's get you out of here." Zara looked up at him through her tangled hair, her green eyes wide with disbelief. No one had shown her kindness in months. She wanted to take his hand, to accept his offer of rescue, but fear held her frozen. What if this was another trap? What if he planned to use her just like everyone else had? Jay seemed to understand her hesitation. He crouched down beside her, bringing himself to her level. "My name is Jay Sterling. I captain a freight ship called the Wanderer. I'm offering you passage off this rock. No strings attached. The choice is yours." His voice was gentle but firm, and something in his eyes convinced her. Slowly, trembling, she reached out and grasped his hand. His grip was warm and strong, and he helped her to her feet with careful attention to her injuries. The crowd muttered angrily, but made no move to stop them. Jace's reputation as a skilled pilot and former military officer preceded him, and his ship's cargo was too valuable to risk losing over one disgraced scientist. As they walked away from the square, Zara felt the weight of dozens of hostile stares on her back. She stumbled once, weakness and exhaustion taking their toll, and Jace's arm came around her waist to steady her. The simple contact sent an unexpected warmth through her body, the first pleasant sensation she had experienced in months. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse from days of silence. Jace glanced down at her, noting the intelligence that still shone in her eyes despite everything she had endured. "Thank me when we're off planet," he replied. "Something tells me your story isn't over yet." The Wanderer lifted off from Meridian Prime with a smooth rumble that Zara felt in her bones. She sat strapped into the co-pilot's seat, watching the colony shrink below them until it became just another speck on the planet's surface. For the first time in months, she could breathe without feeling the weight of hostile stares pressing down on her. Jace's hands moved across the controls with practiced ease. His concentration focused entirely on their escape vector. The ship was older than most, but Zara could tell it was well maintained and loved. Personal touches decorated the cockpit, a faded photograph of a sunset over unknown mountains. A lucky coin welded to the dashboard, the comfortable wear patterns of someone who spent more time among the stars than on solid ground. "Where are we going?" Zara asked, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. "Haven Station," Jace replied, adjusting their heading slightly. "It's a neutral port about 3 days from here. You can book passage to wherever. You want to go from there?" He glanced at her sideways. "Assuming you have somewhere to go." Zara's heart sank. She had been so focused on escaping Meridian Prime that she hadn't thought about what came next. Her reputation was destroyed across the entire sector. No research institution would hire her, and her personal accounts had been frozen pending the investigation. She was truly alone in the universe. "I don't," she admitted quietly. "I have nothing left." "Ooh." Jace was quiet for a moment, then engaged the autopilot and turned to face her fully. In the soft light of the cockpit displays, she could see the concern in his dark eyes. What really happened down there? The whole story. Zara found herself wanting to trust him, the stranger who had risked himself to save her from the mob. Slowly, haltingly, she began to tell him about her research into alien soil samples, about the breakthrough discovery that could revolutionize agriculture on frontier worlds. She explained how her research partner, Dr. Marcus Webb, stolen her work and framed her for falsifying data when their first field tests produced unexpected results. "I was so close," she whispered, tears finally beginning to fall. The soil. Samples contained microorganisms unlike anything we'd ever seen. They could transform barren ground into fertile farmland in a matter of weeks. But Webb wanted all the credit, and when the preliminary tests showed complications, he used me as a scapegoat. Jace reached out and gently brushed a tear from her cheek. The touch was electric, sending shivers through her entire body. "Where are these soil samples now?" "Confiscated," Zara said, leaning into his touch despite herself. "Locked away in the Institute's vault. Even if I could prove my innocence, I'd never get access to them again." A slow smile spread across Jace's face. "Want to bet?" Before Zara could ask what he meant, Jace was pulling up star charts on his navigation display. His fingers danced across the controls, highlighting a route that would take them far from any settled system. "I've got a delivery to make," he said, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Archaeological expedition on Kepler 44 to B. They're always looking for xenobiologists. To analyze their finds. Pays well, too." Zara's heart began to race. "You're offering me work?" "I'm offering you a chance," Jace corrected. "The expedition leader is an old friend of mine, Dr. Alina Vasquez. She doesn't care about sector politics or academic gossip. If you can do the job, that's all that matters to her." Hope flickered in Zara's chest for the first time in months. "Why are you doing this? You barely know me." Jace stood and moved toward the ship's small galley, but not before Zara caught the flash of something deeper in his eyes. "Maybe I see something in you that those colonists missed," he said softly. "Come on, let me show you to the guest quarters. You look like you could use some rest." The guest cabin was small but comfortable, with a narrow bed and a tiny attached refresher. Jace lingered in the doorway as Zara looked around her temporary sanctuary. "The door locks from the inside," he said quietly. "You're safe here." As he turned to leave, Zara caught his arm. "Jace," she whispered, "thank you for everything." He turned back to her, and for a moment they stood close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. His eyes dropped to her lips, and she found herself swaying toward him. Then he stepped back, clearing his throat. "Get some rest," he said, his voice rough. "We've got a long journey ahead." After he left, Zara sank onto the bed and pressed her fingers to her lips. For the first time since her world had collapsed, she felt something other than despair. It was dangerous to let herself hope, dangerous to feel attraction to the man who had saved her. But as she drifted off to sleep, she found herself dreaming of dark eyes and gentle hands, and the possibility that her story might have a different ending than she had imagined. 3 days into their journey, Zara had found her place aboard the Wanderer. She helped Jace with routine maintenance, her scientific mind quick to grasp the ship's systems. More importantly, she had begun to heal. The bruises on her body were fading, and the constant fear that had plagued her on Meridian Prime was slowly being replaced by something she hadn't felt in months: hope. She was working in the cargo bay, cataloging supplies for the archaeological expedition, when Jace called. Out from the cockpit, "Zara, you need to see this." She found him hunched over the communications console, his brow furrowed in concentration. On the screen before him was a message from Dr. Elena Vasquez, the expedition leader they were traveling to meet. "What is it?" Zara asked, moving to stand. Beside his chair, the proximity sent familiar warmth through her body, a feeling she was growing dangerously accustomed to. "Elena's team made a discovery," Jace explained, pointing to an attached image file. "They found something in the ruins that's got them excited. She wants to know if you've ever seen anything like this." He opened the image, and Zara gasped. Photographs showed a crystalline structure about the size of her fist, its surface covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow even in the still image. But what made her heart race was the faint green luminescence emanating from within the crystal, a glow she recognized from her own research. "This is impossible," she whispered, leaning closer to the screen. Her shoulder brushed against Jace's, and she felt his sharp intake of breath. "What is it?" he asked, his voice low and rough. "Ass!" "The luminescence pattern," Zara explained her excitement. "Building. It's identical to what I observed in the soil samples from Meridian Prime, the microorganisms. I was studying produced this exact type of bioluminescent reaction when they were in their most active state." Jace turned in his chair to face her, bringing them even closer together. "You think this crystal and your soil samples are connected?" "More than connected," Zara breathed. "I think they're part of the same system. If I'm right, this crystal might be the key to understanding why my field tests failed. It could prove my innocence." Without thinking, she leaned forward and kissed him. It was impulsive, driven by excitement and gratitude and the attraction that had been building between them for days. For a moment, Jace seemed stunned. Then his arms came around her waist, pulling her closer as he deepened the kiss. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. Zara's cheeks flushed with embarrassment and desire. "I'm sorry," she started to say, but Jace silenced her with a finger against her lips. "Don't apologize," he said softly. "I've been wanting to do that since the moment I saw you in that square." His admission sent heat coursing through her veins. She had been attracted to him from the beginning, but she had convinced herself it was just gratitude for his rescue. Now, looking into his dark eyes, she realized her feelings ran much deeper. "Jace," she whispered, but he was already pulling her closer. This time when they kissed, there was nothing hesitant about it. His hands tangled in her hair while hers explored the strong muscles of his shoulders and back. When he lifted her onto his lap, she wrapped her legs around his waist, losing herself in the sensation of finally being wanted, finally being desired. Instead of despised, they might have lost themselves completely, if not for the proximity alarm that suddenly filled the cockpit with its insistent beeping. Jace reluctantly pulled away, his breathing ragged. "We're approaching the jump point," he explained, his hands still resting on her hips. "I need to... ... "I know," Zara said, sliding off his lap but not moving far. "The ship comes first." Jace smiled at her understanding. "Tonight," he promised, his voice rough with desire. "After we make the jump to Kepler 44 to B?" Zara nodded, her body still humming with want. As Jace turned back to the controls, she moved to the co-pilot seat. Trying to focus on the approaching jump coordinates instead of the memory of his hands on her skin, the jump to hyperspace was smooth, into brilliant lines before fading to the familiar blue-white tunnel of faster-than-light travel. With the ship on autopilot, Jace finally turned back to her. "The crystal Alina found," he said, his tone becoming serious. "If it really is connected to your research, then someone went to a lot of trouble to discredit you." Why, Zara had been wondering the same thing. "The applications for my research are worth billions," she said slowly. "If someone could control the technology, monopolize it. It'd need you out of the way," Jace finished grimly. "Zara, what if your disgrace wasn't just academic politics? What if someone orchestrated the whole thing? The thought sent a chill down her spine. If Jace was right, then her enemies were more powerful and more dangerous than she had imagined. But for the first time since her fall from grace, she wasn't facing that danger alone. Then we'll have to be very careful, she said, reaching out to take his hand. Both of us. Jace squeezed her fingers gently. Together, he agreed, and in that single word, Zara heard a promise that went far beyond their current mission. The attack came without warning during their final approach to Kepler 44-B. Zara was in the galley preparing coffee when the ship suddenly lurched violently to starboard. Throwing her against the bulkhead, emergency klaxons began blaring as red. Warning lights bathed the corridor in hellish crimson. Zara. Jace's voice crackled over the intercom, strained with effort. Get to the cockpit now. She fought her way forward through the bucking ship, her heart pounding with terror. Through the viewports, she could see 3 sleek attack ships closing in on them, their weapons already glowing with deadly energy. Who are they? She gasped, sliding into the co-pilot's seat as another blast rocked the Wanderer. Corporate mercenaries, Jace replied grimly, his hands flying over the controls as he tried to evade their attackers. Someone really doesn't want you reaching that archaeological site. A massive explosion somewhere behind them sent shockwaves through the ship's hull. The lights flickered, and Zara smelled the acrid scent of burning electronics. Through the rear sensors, she could see atmosphere venting from their cargo bay. Hull breach in Section 4, she reported, reading from the damage control displays. We're losing life support. Jace cursed under his breath as he threw the ship into a spiraling dive toward the planet's surface. Emergency landing, he announced. Hold on tight. The next few minutes passed in a blur of terror and desperate maneuvering. The Wanderer screamed through Kepler 4 for 2B's atmosphere, pursued by enemy fire that lit up the sky around them. Jace fought to maintain control, as systems failed one by one, his jaw set with determination. They hit the ground hard in a dense alien forest, the ship carving a deep furrow through towering crystalline trees before finally coming to rest against a massive boulder. Sparks cascaded from shattered control panels, and emergency lighting cast eerie shadows throughout the cockpit. Are you hurt? Jace asked immediately, his hands gentle as they checked her for injuries. Zara shook her head, though her whole body ached from the impact. I'm okay, I'll live. He was already moving, grabbing emergency supplies from the storage lockers. But we need to get out of here before they send ground teams to finish the job. They worked together to gather what they could carry. Emergency rations, water purification tablets, a portable shelter, and Jace's weapons. Outside the ship, the alien forest stretched endlessly in all directions, filled with strange sounds, and an odd, sweet scent that made Zara's head spin slightly. The atmosphere's breathable, Jace said, checking his scanner. But there are large life forms nearby. We need to find shelter before dark. They set off deeper into the forest, moving as quickly as they dared through the unfamiliar terrain. The crystalline trees cast prismatic light patterns on the forest floor, creating a beautiful but disorienting environment. More than once, Zara stumbled over hidden roots or loose stones, and each time Jace was there to catch her, his strong arms pulling her against his chest as night began to fall. They found a small clearing beside a stream where they could set up their emergency shelter. The portable habitat deployed automatically, creating a small but secure space for them to spend the night. I'm sorry, Zara said quietly as they sat beside their tiny campfire, sharing a ration pack. This is all my fault. If you hadn't helped me... Jace moved closer, his arm sliding around her shoulders. He said softly. I made my choice back on Meridian Prime. I'm not sorry. She turned to look at him in the flickering firelight, seeing the sincerity in his dark eyes. They could have killed you because of me, but they didn't. No. His hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear she didn't realize had fallen. We're alive, we're together, and we're going to figure this out. The warmth in his voice, the gentle strength of his touch, broke down the last of her defenses. She leaned into him, and this time, when their lips met, there was nothing hesitant about her response. Days of growing attraction and shared danger had built to this moment, and she poured all of her fear and gratitude and desire into the kiss. Jace responded with equal hunger, his arms tightening around her as they sank down onto the soft material of the shelter floor. His hands roamed her body with reverent care, as if she were something precious he was afraid to break. When he whispered her name against her throat, she felt something inside her chest crack open, letting in light for the first time in months. They made love slowly, tenderly, their bodies joining with an intimacy that went far beyond physical pleasure. In his arms, Zara felt whole again. No longer the broken scientist who had knelt in that dusty square, but a woman worthy of love and desire. When she cried out his name in the darkness, it was with joy rather than pain. Afterward, they lay entwined. Beneath the alien stars, her head pillowed on his chest as he stroked her hair. The forest around them hummed with strange night sounds, but within their small shelter, they had created a world that belonged only to them, whatever happens tomorrow. Jace murmured against her hair. Tonight was worth it. Zara lifted her head to look at him, seeing her own emotions reflected in his eyes. "I think I'm falling in love with you," she whispered. His smile was brilliant even in the darkness. "Think?" he teased gently, "'cause I'm pretty sure I'm already there." She kissed him again, soft and sweet, tasting their shared future on his lips. Outside their shelter, the hunt might continue, but here in his arms, she had found something worth fighting for. Dawn broke over the alien forest with spectacular beauty, the crystalline trees refracting the rising sun into countless rainbows. Zara woke in Jace's arms, feeling safer than she had in months, despite their dangerous situation. His heartbeat was steady beneath her ear, and she allowed herself a few precious moments to simply enjoy the sensation of being loved and protected. "Morning, beautiful," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. His arms tightened around her as he pressed a gentle kiss to the top of her head. "Good morning," she whispered back, tilting her face up for a proper kiss. The sweet intimacy of waking up together filled her with warmth, even as she knew they couldn't stay hidden in their small sanctuary forever, as if summoned by her thoughts. The sound of approaching aircraft filled the air outside their shelter. Jace was instantly alert, rolling to his feet and reaching for his weapons with practiced efficiency. 3 ships, he reported grimly, checking the scanner. Landing about half a kilometer east. This looks like our friends decided to finish the job. Personally. Zara felt her brief happiness evaporate, replaced by the familiar cold fear that had dominated her life for so long. But this time she wasn't alone. Jace was already moving, packing their essential supplies with quick, economical movements. "A canyon about 2 clicks north," he said, studying the topographical display. "If we can reach it, we might be able to lose them in the rock formations." They moved out quickly, staying low and using the dense forest for cover. Behind them, Zara could hear the sounds of their pursuers crashing through the underbrush, getting closer with each passing minute. Her lungs burned from the exertion, but Jace's steady presence beside her kept her moving even when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. They had almost reached the canyon when disaster struck. A shot rang out behind them, and Zara felt something burn across her shoulder, spinning her around and sending her crashing to the ground. Blood soaked through her shirt as pain exploded across her back. "Zara." Jace was beside her instantly, his face pale with concern. Behind them, she could see 3 figures in corporate military gear approaching through the trees, their weapons trained on both of them. Dr. Zara Voss called the leader, a tall woman with cold blue eyes. "I'm Commander Nash, Titan Corporation. Security, you're coming with us." "Over my dead body?" Jace snarled, his own weapon appearing in his hands with fluid grace. Nash smiled without warmth. "That can be arranged, Captain Sterling, but Dr. Voss has information we need for research. Data is worth considerably more than your life." Zara struggled to her feet despite the burning pain in her shoulder, her mind racing. Titan Corporation was one of the largest agricultural conglomerates in human space. If they were behind her disgrace, it meant the stakes were even higher than she had imagined. "My research was confiscated," she said, trying to buy time. "I don't have access to it anymore." "Perhaps not," Nash replied. "But Dr. Alina Vasquez's archaeological team has found something very interesting, something that validates your work completely. With the crystal they discovered and your expertise, Titan Corporation will control alien terraforming technology, worth trillions of credits. Understanding hit Zara like a physical blow. The crystal Alina had found wasn't just connected to her research, was the missing piece that would prove her theories correct and revolutionize agriculture across the galaxy. Titan Corporation had destroyed her reputation to steal her work, and now they planned to use her to unlock technology that belonged to all of humanity. Never, she said firmly, surprised by the strength in her own voice. I'll die before I help. Nash's smile widened. We'll see about that. Take them both. The mercenaries started forward, but they had underestimated Jace Sterling. Years of military training and survival instincts took over as he moved with lethal precision. His first shot took down the soldier on the right, while his second sent Nash diving for cover behind a crystalline tree. Run, he shouted to Zara, laying down covering fire as she stumbled toward the canyon edge. What followed was a desperate running battle through the alien landscape. Jace fought like a man possessed, using every trick he had learned as a colonial scout to outmaneuver their pursuers. But they were outnumbered and outgunned, and Zara's injury was slowing them down. They reached the canyon rim, with Nash and her remaining soldier close behind. Below them, the ancient stone formation stretched down into shadows, offering both refuge and deadly danger. It was a leap of faith in every sense of the word. Together, Jace asked, taking her uninjured hand in his. Together, she agreed, and they jumped. They landed hard on a narrow ledge 50 feet down, hidden from their pursuers by an overhang of rock. Above them, they could hear Nash cursing as she tried to find another way down. They had bought themselves time, but not much. The research facility, Zara gasped, pressing her hand against her wounded shoulder. If we can reach Dr. Vasquez, we can expose Titan Corporation's conspiracy. Jace nodded, checking his scanner for the facility's location. It's 20 kilometers east. We can make it if we move fast. The journey across the alien landscape was a nightmare of pain and exhaustion, but they pressed on together, driven by love and the desperate need to see justice done. When the research facility's lights finally appeared on the horizon, Zara felt tears of relief streaming down her face. Dr. Alina Vasquez was a small woman with silver hair and kind eyes who welcomed them despite their bedraggled appearance. Within hours, Zara was working with the archaeological team's equipment, analyzing the crystal that would vindicate her research and expose Titan Corporation's crimes. It's beautiful, Alina breathed as they watched the crystal respond to Zara's soil samples, its internal light pulsing in harmony with the microorganism's activity. This technology could transform every dead world in human space. And it will, Zara promised, her hand finding Jace's as they stood together watching the future unfold. But it belongs to everyone, not just corporate interests. 3 months later, Zara stood before the Colonial Science Council, her reputation fully restored and her research validated. Titan Corporation's executives faced criminal charges, and Commander Nash was serving a life sentence for conspiracy and attempted murder. But for Zara, the greatest victory was the man waiting for her in the gallery. When she finished her testimony, Jace was there to sweep her into his arms, spinning her around as she laughed with pure joy. So what now? He asked, setting her down but keeping his arms around her waist. You could have your pick of research positions. Zara smiled up at him, seeing their future reflected in his dark eyes. Actually, she said, pulling a small device from her pocket, I was thinking about field work. There are a dozen worlds that could benefit from this technology, and they'll need someone to oversee the implementation. Sounds like you'll need a good ship, Jace said, his own smile matching hers. The best, she agreed, standing on her toes, to kiss him. Think you know anyone who might be interested in a long-term contract? His answer was lost in the kiss, but Zara didn't need words to understand his response. They had found each other in the darkness, and together they would carry light to the farthest reaches of human space, as they walked out of the council chambers hand in hand. Zara felt the last shadows of her past finally fade away.
She was no
longer the broken woman who had knelt in that dusty square. She was Dr. Zara Voss, scientist, explorer. and the woman who had captured the heart of Captain J. Sterling. Their story was just beginning, and the universe was waiting for them among the stars.